Hello, welcome everyone to the Getting It Wrong podcast.
Mhm.
This is a podcast where we embrace getting it wrong because getting it wrong is the first step to getting it right. I'm your co host, Gabby,
And I'm Morgan.
and we are ready to get into it. But first, I have to say something. We
Hmm.
recorded this episode already. This is us redoing it because we lost the first half of our
Hmm.
recording. Um, So I just want to let you guys know that it's not going to be like this. This episode is going to be a little weird, but just bear with us. We have some great information and we really, really want to give it to you. So
Hmm.
keep listening, okay?
Okay.
All right, let's move into our hot topics. Who got it wrong this week, Morgan?
Okay. So the person that got it wrong this week is Wasa Wasa Pressa Pressa. Apparently, that's the handle name for Coil Ray's significant other. So I'll read you the tweet that I feel like was all wrong. So it says Americans got no culture. Their biggest culture is hip hop. They don't even know what island they from. They just black, like the color. First off, the punctuation is everything. We'll start
Is there
there.
punctuation?
There's no punctuation, and that's why I can hardly read it. Not
Okay.
only is it a jumbled mess because of the lack of punctuation, but also because of the content. Because it's all wrong. But before I get into how I feel, how do you feel about it?
Well, I definitely feel like Wassa Wassa got it wrong because Black Americans do have culture. I mean, we had to create our own culture, and it's
Exactly.
more than just hip hop. There's beauty in our culture, so that's how I feel about it.
Exactly. I have the exact same sentiment. I feel like there was a point in time where I was like yearning for like understanding where we came from. But then once I started realizing the beauty of like the culture that we do have, like you said, we had to really like create our own culture. Like we had to band together and not only fight, oppression, but the civil rights movement and everything that's going on now, police brutality, all of it is it in a way it can bring us together. And then also like we just have such rich um like artistic abilities and what else? Like we just create like just a creative, like amazing people. Is
Black
I mean,
culture is pop culture.
it's
Okay.
true, true. Yeah, and then now that you mention it, that also reminds me that that's something that is just crazy to me to think that like TikTok and like all of the Gen Z what they call the Gen Z culture is truly just like a watered down version of Black culture. And one student, Khalil Green, he is a student at Yale University, and not only just a student, but the student body president, I believe, as well. And he
Okay,
does have
Khalil.
exactly. He has a he has a page like on TikTok and Instagram, and he basically explains exactly what I just said, which is how Gen Z is nothing but a washed down or watered down, diluted version of Black culture. So there it
You
is.
hate to
Wassa
see it.
wassa. you you got it wrong. I really hope that's how you say it. I hope that's how you say it. I'm not hip.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm surprised you knew about Coyle Ray's significant other. I didn't even know you knew
girl,
who Coyle Ray was.
girl, I barely did.
Okay.
I just barely. But yeah, I don't stand.
Oh, you know what? There is something that you said that I have questions about
Mhm.
because you said that you used to yearn um for knowing where you came from.
Mhm.
And I'm just like that's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like everyone yearns to know where they came from and I feel like it's
Yeah.
still important for us to know where we came from. It's like, unfortunately, that was stripped from us.
Yeah.
But I still feel like that's important. Yes, we have our culture here as Black Americans, but
Mhm.
I do still feel like it's important for
Mhm.
us to know where we came from
Yeah.
because it didn't start here.
Exactly. And I think where I, found solace, I think is the right word. Basically
Hmm.
where it comforted me knowing, like, once I finally
Hmm.
realized that this is culture, like,
Hmm.
that comforted me. So I think what I was really, like, interested in understanding was, like, what is, like, the culture that I have ties to. Um,
Mm.
and I think, just wanting to know, like, oh, like, traditionally, what did we wear? Like, things like that it was interesting to me, but we don't really necessarily have all of those answers unless you want to buy like 23andMe, which is kind of ghetto for them to even offer that after taking away our culture. You know what I'm saying?
The same way.
Like,
I feel like we should I don't know if you need like a prick of my blood to see how much African ancestry I have before you can offer it to me for free, but I feel like you should. Okay.
no, that should be a thing. Like, if you have a certain background, like if you are African American, you should get it for free. It's like, we did steal this, so we should. They don't care about reparations, so why would
Right? It's all about the money. It's not about
right?
making us feel good. But anyway,
Yeah,
so we're done talking about wasa wasa.
right.
Um,
So first, we do want to talk about um, what are some things in our culture that we do want to pass down. What are some things you can think of?
Something I do want to pass down is Black women's work ethic,
Mm,
because there's something about being a Black woman. It's like we have a work ethic that is unmatched.
mhm,
And that is something I want to pass down to my children or child. I wouldn't
mhm.
mind having maybe one more. But yes, I want to pass down that drive, that work ethic. But I do want to share something I don't want to pass down slash do want to pass down. I don't want to pass
Mm,
down not being able to rest,
mm.
because I feel
Yeah.
like resting is not a part of our culture. If you're resting, you are lazy,
Mm.
basically.
No, really.
So it
That
has to be a balance. I want to pass down that work ethic, but also balance that out with rest, knowing it's okay to rest and rejuvenate yourself.
mhm. Because you have to have, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. So
Exactly.
passing that to your children is so important. Like, don't let it run empty. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. Put your what is it, your gas mask on
Yes.
first.
Put yours on first, then the child. Because
Yeah,
if you're out of here, they're out of here.
exactly. That's a great one. Um, one thing I feel like I want to pass down is, like, the sense of pride of who you are, like, of who we are, like, just like something I've always gotten from my parents, my grandma, everybody, that I like, all of my elders is, like, just loving who we are and appreciating, like, where we come from. I definitely want to make sure I pass that down to Zara. Um, and it's something I'm starting to see in her already, and I love it. And I just want to make sure I keep that going because it's so easy to, um, like, with everything going on in the world and, like, going, you can walk into pretty much anywhere and people will make you forget, like, who you are is beautiful because they have a preconceived notion because of racism. They have a preconceived notion of who you are, so just having her, like, instilling in her who she is something I definitely want to make sure I pass down. Just a sense of pride of being a young Black woman is something that's going to be so important, going through, yeah, for the rest of her life. So Definitely something we want to pass down.
Definitely. Gotta let them know they're the blueprint. Okay.
For real.
We do have an interview today.
Yes.
We lost, like I said, we lost some of it with our last recording,
Mhm.
but I still want us to give some background information on who this person is. And since
Yes.
it is someone related to you, Morgan, I will cross it over to you.
Yes. Okay, so the guest speaker for today is my grandma, Gwendolyn Robinson. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she's just a beautiful person. And she also has an amazing background. She has a background as a nurse practitioner, and she also has is currently she's no longer a nurse practitioner and like no longer practicing, but she currently advocates for people that are just trying to navigate the healthcare system. So people just trying to get an understanding of what their next steps are, or just you have all of these different specialists like a GI doctor, you have an OBGYN, and she basically bridges that gap for people just trying to, get an understanding of how to sift through all of what you see in the healthcare system. So amazing background, and then she's also studied for quite a long time, including I believe she mentioned she studied at Harvard as well, so amazing background. I wish I could do it
Yes.
justice. I can't.
Right? It's like she is the elegant, the illustrious, the
Mm,
lifelong learner, Miss Gwendolyn Robinson.
mhm. Yes,
And
awesome.
what we were talking about before it was cut off is she was sharing something that she wanted to pass down, right?
Mhm.
And she wanted to pass down, or she wished was passed down. No, she passed it down. I'm sorry. Respect for your elders,
Mhm.
because there is a big difference between the respect that was shown for elders in previous generations than current generations.
Right, exactly.
And I,
Yeah.
mhm.
Mhm.
You can keep going. Mhm.
Okay. No, yeah, I think that was most of it. She mentioned that, growing up she had to like respect her elders, even if it was like somebody, in the neighborhood, because those were, people helping like raise them. They had more of a village than what we have. And just like saying yes ma'am, yes sir, just respecting the people that actually put in the work to raise you, was like more value back then. And she was, I think she was saying she passed it down, but she was hoping to see it be passed down even more in our, future generations.
Yes, because I know I still say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, to people who I perceive as my elders. But I
Mhm.
noticed that my youngest sibling doesn't do the same. Um, and I brought that up. I brought that up to Miss Gwendolyn Robinson, that younger generations tend to go by not respecting people who don't respect them. It doesn't matter their age,
Mhm.
doesn't matter if it's in their family or anything.
Mm.
So I brought that up to her, and she gave some insight of how she feels like the elders have a responsibility too when it comes to respect. And I don't want to get too much into it. I want you all to
Mhm.
hear her explain it for
Yeah.
herself. So we can go
Okay.
ahead and get into it.
All right.
Okay, so back to the question about the mutual respect or lack of respect between generations, and I think that probably uh, failure to have adequate communication between generations could be foundational to that problem. Because I think young people may not realize exactly how to preserve certain aspects of our culture. That's why we're talking about this tonight, and because
Yeah.
you're recognizing the need for it, and so there may be a lack, in that regard. So they've not necessarily learned the importance of maintaining that respect for the former generations. And then I think also I can't just blame it all on the young people, because I think the older generations maybe have this tendency of judging, you know, judging the younger generation. Of course, you're never going to be as good as the one before you. That just
Mhm.
seems to be the way it goes. Back in the good old days when everything was better and perfect. But and so I think the younger people can feel that, you're being hyper criticized, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. And so um, that may be viewed as well, we're doing this our way. And so therefore there's less of a tendency to have respect for the older generation. So I think that may be a part of it. The older people need to learn that it's not necessarily that one generation is better than the other. And yes, we do need to preserve these various tenets of our culture and pass it down and preserve it and make sure that it's perpetuated. But at the same time, we have to realize that times change, and so many things in the world change. I just described what happened with my generation. My
Yeah.
my parents could not prepare me fully for what I was going to face and experience, because they had never experienced it. And I think the same thing is true of each generation. I did not experience my children at age 11. You were just talking about the child who has uh, you know, had created a problem with the internet for a school district. Are you kidding? I
Right.
mean,
Little
the kids
genius.
that have access to the internet, and the world, therefore, has access to them. So you are living in a different generation. There are different things in the world, different challenges. And so you're going to be facing things that I and my generation did not have to face. And that is just reality. So it's impossible for me to fully prepare you for how to parent your children. But I think that's why it's important for us to recognize those things that are foundational to our culture.
Yeah.
Having respect for the older people is extremely important, because of what they have to pass down to you.
Yeah.
You can't start from scratch. You got to start from the foundation and build on it, and make it
Mhm.
better and adapt it to
Yeah.
your generation and the things that are confronting you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
that's
I feel like
amazing. What you just said right there, like it almost just blew my mind, because I think it's so important when you said that it was impossible for you or the generation before you to prepare you for the world that you're living in, because
Hmm.
I mean everything has changed so drastically.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And on our IG page, Getting It Wrong Pod, we asked a question to our audience. What do you wish was passed down to you? What do you wish was or was not passed down to you
Mhm.
from the previous generation? And we got so much engagement on that
Hmm.
question. There were so many things, and a lot of people were saying what they wish wasn't passed down
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
to them from previous generations. And that got me thinking a lot of people are, I don't know, I wouldn't use the word upset, but they feel maybe a little resentful towards the previous generation for not preparing them adequately for the
Mm.
world that we're in today. But you
Mm.
saying that it's it's almost impossible,
It
Hmm.
especially
kind of
with the birth of technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It
It's
kind of
almost
bridges the gap.
impossible.
So
Hmm.
like it. just being aware that, they can only prepare you for the struggles that they have gone through. And then from that point, they have to leave you to learn how to prepare for the struggles that you are going to face, because they're not going to be the same. And that's funny, because I remember telling myself, like, I was just all right, could grow up and have the exact same struggles, because I know how to help her through those. If she has the same ones that I've had, I'm like, I got you, girl. We got this. But that's not how it works. They do have different struggles. And that just bridges like a gap right there. Just recognizing and realizing that there are going to be different things you go through. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. So I do also, and Gabby, this is kind of your territory as well, because you get into more of like the health segment a lot of times. So what I do want to bring up and kind of like lead you into also, one of the things that is just crazy is the fact that we have to both recognize and learn how to deal with like generational trauma. And that is something that, as soon as we like understand it and recognize it, maybe we can start moving past it, because as Black people, it is quite evident that we have had and continue to have a lot of struggle just being who we are in America, and there's trauma that comes with that. So I think that is something that we do want to recognize, that we don't want to pass down. So there was like one thing I saw. I was reading articles. One came on Psychology Today, and it just brought up that there was research done by Canadian psychiatrist Vivian M. Rakoff. She worked with patients that were survivors of the Holocaust, and she noticed that even through their parents, even though their parents did not overly showcase impacts of their experiences, all three children that she went ahead and like did research with, all three of those children displayed severe psychological distress. And she even made a note that it would almost be easier to believe that they, rather than their parents, had suffered the corrupting, searing hell that they went through. Is
Wow.
that not insane? And that's just a lot to take in. So just knowing that even though like we didn't experience it, even though Granny, you didn't necessarily experience it, but you just said like you remember someone that remembers someone that was a slave.
Right.
So just knowing like it's not that far off. And so that trauma is not that far off. It goes with you. And it's just amazing. Do you guys have any input on that? It just like that just blows my mind that they weren't there, but they can experience some of the same distress just going through their everyday life. That just blows my mind right there.
Yeah. So that brings me to a term that I heard maybe a couple years ago called epigenetics. And that is the study of basically trauma being able to be passed down like through genes. So even though, like what you just said, even though in a previous generation they could experience something, it can literally change their genetic makeup. That trauma can change their genetic makeup, and it can pass that down to later generations. And it's literally what you just explained.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just crazy to know that. I know someone, I think a part of what I was reading was saying that, if you really think about it, you as you as a child, you were at one point in your mother's womb, and at one point she was in her mother's womb, and at
Hmm.
one point she was in her mother's womb. And when the way that they described it, they said like being in the body, and while they are experiencing emotions, they can still transfer some of those feelings. So feelings of distress, and you're pregnant. I know that was one of the things. I feel like you, Granny, my mom, everybody around me when I was pregnant, they were like, make sure you're in a good state. Make sure you are. And I don't think it necessarily clicked. I was just like going with emotions, like, yeah, I want to be in a good state so I have a happy delivery. But like now hearing that,
Hmm.
it just brings it to a whole nother level. It just makes me recognize it in a completely different way. Like being in a good state could mean so much to Zara's life
Hmm.
in the future. Like, yeah. And
Well,
that's just amazing to me.
it is.
Yeah.
It
But
really.
I do. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Gabby.
Oh, I was. If you had something to say, you can go ahead and say it. I had a question that I wanted to ask you.
Oh, I was just going to comment that, the things that you're talking about. I mean, this is really, really powerful. And I think it's important for us to know that and to recognize it. And I guess one of the things that I would really like to be a takeaway for your audience, for people that are listening, uh, is to realize that even though we are talking about some things that are traumatic, we're talking about things that are challenging to our people. I want us to realize, and I hope we will all realize, that we are, in spite of all that, we are powerful beyond imagination. I mean, we are powerful enough to conquer anything that we are confronted with. Because and it's not just us in and of ourselves. A part of our foundation and a part of our culture, we are people who are grounded in God. We are grounded in our spirituality. We are grounded in our belief, and it has carried us through all of the trauma that we have endured. I mean, it is just amazing that we have survived, and not only survived, but have thrived. And we should not be the first in anything. We should not be the best of anything when you look at all the odds. And yet, if we are given the opportunity, and every time we are given the opportunity in an even playing field, we will become the best. We will dominate whatever the thing is. And so it kind of takes me back
Mm-hmm.
something that W.E.B. Du Bois says. He wrote this book about the soul of Black folk. I mean, the soul, that soul, I mean, that is our connection with God. That's what that is. That's why you see it you hear it in our singing, you hear it in our speaking, you hear it in us swinging a tennis racket, you see it in us putting on the boxing glove. Whatever it is, we always absolutely dominate and rise to the top. And that's because of who we are and our connection to the Most High God. So as we're talking about these challenges and the trauma and everything that we have endured and encountered as a people, I do not want us to lose focus on the fact that we are powerful beyond imagination. And even, as we were talking before about the respect for the elders, the our answer is in the word of God. See, that is foundational. That's a part of our culture. That's a part of the foundation that we should never, ever, ever leave. Because even, as we were talking, I was thinking about different scriptures and how the word of God as our foundation is going to give us the directions that we need to navigate anything that we're confronted with, and we will be successful with it because the answer and the solution is in the word of God. Now, I don't know, how your listeners believe or what, but this is me. This is me. This is
Mm-hmm.
me talking from my heart and what I believe, and when we look even at the civil rights movement and those who led the civil rights movement, it was the power of our spirituality and our connection with God. When our people were enslaved, enslaved in a way that no other people on the planet Earth have ever had been exposed to. That the kind of slavery that's passed from one generation to the next, you're a slave, and then your children are slaves, and it's insane. And yet, in the midst of that, our people are out in those cotton fields, chopping cotton, picking cotton, working from sun up to sundown, and not earning not one copper penny, not one copper penny. And yet they're out there singing songs. And the songs that they sang have made their way to the largest opera houses in the world. They don't even know who wrote the songs, but those, I'm getting chills just thinking about it,
Yeah.
Go down Moses, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, swing low, sweet child. I mean, those songs, Kumbaya, those songs that got them through all of that trauma and all of that drama and oppression and enslavement, those songs are still resident in us. That's why we create music.
Mm-hmm.
Every new genre of music that comes out, you can trace it right back to us and our people. Oh,
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to just pause there because I don't want to preach a sermon, but I do want to know that we are some powerful people, and it is because of our connection to the Most High God.
That, and you bring me directly to the next point, because they also mentioned, like in the Psychology Today article, it says just as traumatic experiences can be passed down from one generation to the next, it brings you hope, because so can the capacity to overcome the trauma and building resilience. So that
Mm-hmm.
also gets passed down, and that's something that does bring you hope. Just knowing, like, what are some of the things that you can do to make sure that we can still overcome those things. So I think one of them, just like we mentioned, is recognizing what it is. Um, and another is knowing that you can be passing down that resilience as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, they mentioned that just discussing it with your family, like
Mm-hmm.
we're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
it just opens up so much, because the same way that you can pass down anxiety, you could be passing down, like, they mentioned that if you tell your children some of your experiences that you've gone through, they can recognize that some of that anxiety that I'm feeling isn't even necessarily my own. So if I understand where it's coming from, I understand that, okay, I understand what this is, and I can start moving through it. So
Mm-hmm.
having those conversations as well can be a major part of understanding and moving through it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think
Awesome.
a lot of that is just such important information.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Communication is very important. And I mean, I loved everything that you said. It sounded like you were so passionate about it. And I could tell that spirituality and a relationship with God is something that you made sure that you passed down to your children.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that
That's
you
right.
made sure you wanted to pass down. But this is called the Getting It Wrong podcast. So I do want to ask you, is there something that you may have passed down to your children? I don't know if it's maybe like a behavior or maybe beliefs that you realize maybe weren't so great.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. 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 Oh my goodness. How long is this list? And I am really grateful. I am very, very grateful to be a person who is a student. I am a student. I am hungry. I am thirsty. I never arrive. I am always I'm always moving forward. I'm always stretching. I'm always reaching up. I'm always learning. I am never going to get to a place where, okay, this is it. I'm camping out here. It is. I've reached my destination. Now, no. And so I am always learning new things about me. I'm learning new things about mistakes that I have made. And some things, you know, wow. Okay, so it's like as young mothers, there's a tendency to look at what you perceive as mistakes that your parents made, or things that you identify that they could have done better, or they, maybe they shouldn't have done that, or they should. So you can identify your parents' mistakes that you perceive as their mistakes. And then you take that information and you try to make sure that you don't repeat it. And in doing so, there is this feeling. I remember being your age and having this feeling, it's like, you're going to get it right. It's like, they got it wrong. They got it wrong, but by golly, you're gonna get it right. You're gonna straighten this thing out, and you're gonna, you're glad for what they did, but you're gonna straighten out the part that they fouled up on, and you're gonna get that right. But but what you can't see, and you only learn this later, is that you're making your own set of mistakes, and they usually will be pointed out to you when your children reach the age that you are now, and that's just the way it goes. So, as a parent, I remember one of the things that I learned, like the generation before me, Black people beat their kids. They beat your
They do.
and some of the words that were said, like knock the devil, beat the devil out of you. I'll beat the devil out you, or I can remember, some parents said, I'm going to scalp you, I knock your head one sided. I mean, these are your loving parents, and not only said it, they did it. They attempted to do it. And then pointing to a scripture in the Bible, I beat the child, and he, and you won't kill him. So, but not putting it in a balanced context. So I got whipped, I got beat, and so I beat my children too, because I thought this is how you raise them. This is what you're supposed to do. And I do think that there is a time and a place for spanking children and corporal punishment. I think that there is a time and a place for it, but I think our people took it to an extreme, and that was passed down, and it was extreme. And I can remember when I was in college and studying, about Black culture, Black literature, and that and some of the slave narratives, books that were written by the slaves telling their story, not just receiving a story that's been filtered through someone else, but these are the voices of the slaves telling what their experience was like. And I remember reading how they said that they were made to they were forced to act like they were happy. They had to just kind of be jolly and happy, because otherwise, it's like the master, the slave owners would be like, why you got that look on your face? And I can remember hearing things like that as a child. Wipe that look off your face. Well, so you just got spanked and you're hurting. You're hurting inside and outside. And then somebody tells you to wipe that look off your face and dry those tears up. I mean, whoa, excuse me. And then when I read where they said, I will beat the devil out of you. I remember when I read that in a slave narrative, I sat in that room and I tried in class, and I tried not to weep, because I could remember hearing it, oh, I'll beat the devil out of you. And that's where it came from. That's what the slave master said to the slaves. wipe that look off your face and I'll beat the devil out of you. What?
Yeah.
How did I get the devil in me and I'm the slave and you the slave master? Look like you got more
Right.
devil in you than I do, and then we took that behavior and we use that on our children. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Because I've always heard people say that we use the same punishment for our children that the slave masters use on us, but I've literally never heard a specific example that you just gave, like reading slave literature and
Mhm.
and being able to read it like firsthand. That's what was said to them, and that's what they were made to do. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's another level.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
whole nother level.
Yes, it is. And we have to clean that up. That's something we have to, I think, when we can recognize the origin,
Mm-hmm.
and question it. Question, where did this come from? And where we need to go. We don't have to go out trying to create something new.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we get into the Word of God, it's all in the book. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's all in there. The love is in there. Reading Proverbs, that's a good place for young people to start. Young mothers and fathers with their children, just reading the book of Proverbs, because it will help you prepare your children even for the world that they're going to live in, because some things don't change. Peer pressure and making wrong decisions and the consequences. These are principles. These things are applicable to every generation, no matter when you lived on planet Earth. And so, again, getting in the Word of God and allowing that to be the important guide of our lives is extremely important. And I think it will help us to get rid of some of the things that we don't need to pass on, from generation to generation. But yeah, that was definitely one of them. I can name a lot of things I've had to adjust and change. Yeah. I don't know if you want to hear more, but that was it.
Honestly, I feel like I could talk and listen to you forever, because
Right.
this is no, like this is an amazing conversation, and I feel like I'm learning so much. Like I'm taking notes and I'm like, okay, Proverbs.
Mm.
Right.
Okay.
You're like, okay, and what else? Okay. Slave literature. Let me write that down.
Seriously. And I'm also very curious, because since you have this vast healthcare knowledge and you even have some background in some psychology, I think I remember you saying that. Do you notice any patterns, like when it comes to culture and healthcare? Because I know you advocate for people in healthcare. Do you notice any patterns when it comes to different the culture and healthcare?
Yes, and a couple of them that really stand out and come to mind immediately. The culture, our people, um, not engaging in preventive measures as much as we need to. It's getting better with each generation, but like in my parents' generation, when you look at the fact that economically they did not have the money to run to the doctor every time someone was sick, and they certainly were not going to the doctor if you were not sick. Going to the doctor for what?
Wow. That's a
go
good
to
point.
you go to the doctor if you're sick, and you have to be sick enough. So, what is sick enough? Sick enough means I've tried everything I know. What Miss Susie told me, what Mr. Bates passed on. I've tried everything I know, and this problem is still here, or it's getting worse. So I can't fix it. So I need to go to the doctor. So by the time they go to the doctor, I'm exaggerating now a little bit. They walk in half dead already, So is a pattern with our people. Whenever we address a problem, it is when you compare our people to other ethnic groups, our illness, condition, whatever it is it's much more advanced. So we're going to experience more complications. We're going to experience more death. The death rate is going to be higher. And so these are things that have been prevalent, among our people and our attitudes toward health. Other people are doing preventive things, they're living a lifestyle that includes preventive health care, and our people haven't done that. We will spend money for instance, I distribute a lot of products, not a lot, but a few products that I really recommend, highly recommend, things that help the body to heal itself and keep itself healthy and vibrant. I'm 70, I'll be 75 years old next month. I'm not on any medication. That's not an accident. I mean, that is not an accident. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
teaching people this, but our people as a whole, we would rather spend money on our hair. We'll spend $200 on some hair and not blink. We're going to keep, and because that's how we are. I mean, we want us to maintain a certain look, and that's okay, but it's at the expense of not taking care of the inside of our body. So these are some of the value, a part of culture is, what are the things that you value as a people, as a community of people. So our values are many times skewed when it comes to our health. Yeah, and we would rather spend more money on hair and nails. And look, those are the two parts of the body that are dead. I mean,
Good point.
you know, oh goodness. So to be able to make changes with that, and another thing too is like with our men, they're worse than women, and it's really so sad, and it's just heartbreaking because then our men die younger. I mean, they die early. I mean, dying in their 40s with strokes. I mean, it's just, and how many Black people have grow up with their grandfathers or great grandfathers. It's like we need our people to live so that they can be here to help the next generation, so they can be here to support the younger people, even in raising their children. So all of this, our health and our attitudes toward it, play into it. One last thing on that note,
Mm-hmm.
we have a habit of going to see about ourselves, like I said, when we get sick enough, and then using the emergency room as a primary care facility, um, there again, instead of taking care of ourselves and having our regular checkups and regular mammograms, following all of those preventive protocols so that you remain healthy, so that if there is a problem, it is detected early. So early treatment is what yields more successful treatment and longer lifespan.
Wow. Yeah, that's an awesome point. And I think in addition to that, you not taking care of, not being preventative, but then also there is a lack of trust in the healthcare system when it comes to the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't give you much time to prepare for that, but yeah, it does date back a pretty long time.
Yes.
Like you hear about, I think it was actually in the 80s, Black women going in for like your standard like a routine well woman check, and then
Mm-hmm.
being sterilized without their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So there there we do have like a history of not trusting the healthcare system, and I think that also plays a role. Is that something you've also noticed?
Morgan, I'm so glad you brought that point up because it's true. What you're saying is true. It's undeniable that is a part of our history, a part of our experience in this country. And I wish I could say it was just a part of our history, but unfortunately, it's continuing to go on even to this day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not as severe, maybe not quite as blatant, but it is still present to this very day. Um, we're perceived as being able to endure pain, and that comes from Black people don't hurt, like we're so strong and so tough and so more like animals, that we don't really feel pain. That is something it's still prevalent. It still influences health decisions and the kind of care that we receive as a people. And I can I could give some examples that in fact, I will give one. I was working at a clinic in Chicago, and this physician was going to do a minor surgical procedure on a patient. As a matter of fact, it was just a minor procedure he was doing on her ear. And so I wanted to observe him, because I was newly out of nurse practitioner training, and this is something that I may be called to do, called upon to perform at some point. And so I wanted to observe him in carrying out this procedure. And he said, sure, you can watch. And so I went in the room to observe him. So he also had a medical student with him, a resident was with him. So the three of us were in there, and this was a young Black woman. And so he went ahead, proceeded to do the procedure. But he did not administer enough pain medication. So she's there lying on that procedure table. And I was holding her hand and just kind of, holding her hand and being supportive of her. And the two of them were actually doing the procedure. And so it's like she was in so much pain, and then she was, tensing up and becoming really, really anxious. And I said, I mean, I just absolutely just butted in, really, to put it. I was like, hey guys, hold up a second. How about a little more pain medication here? And they both just stopped, and looked at me. I said, oh, let's give her a little more lidocaine here. And they, oh, okay, sure, and they went ahead. So after the procedure, she came to me and she was like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so, and I'm looking at them, and neither one of them, they were not mean. They they were, I worked with them every day. They were nice people, but how could you not notice that this young woman is experiencing this pain, and you're just going ahead on stitching and sewing and cutting and, and then even my brother, who just passed earlier this year and at age 79, and so he was kind of in and out of the emergency room a few times, prior to his passing. And that was just not a pleasant experience for me, because I could see firsthand, like, the attitudes. These are the attitudes of these healthcare workers toward an older Black male. And it was very, very disturbing to me. But I was there to advocate for him. But at the same time, I'm thinking, what happens if your sister is not a nurse practitioner? Because when I tell them that, then it changes things. But it's, so yeah, there's, you're right, there's the distrust, and it is well founded and justified. And it certainly does have a negative impact on us as a people.
Yeah.
I'm glad you raised that, Morgan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it doesn't solve everything, but I think one thing that is important, when you can, try and find doctors that look like you. And that is something I hear pretty often. If you can find like an OBGYN, like a Black woman, or even just a woman of color, sometimes that can make a difference. So finding providers and practitioners that look like you can be helpful.
That's true.
And
This is true.
do you have any other suggestions that people can help advocate for themselves? How can people advocate for themselves in healthcare? Because all skin folk ain't kin folk. So I'm like, I need another option other than, it's like, and also, what if I can't find a Black healthcare healthcare provider? So it's like, what suggestions do you have for people to advocate for themselves when it comes to their health?
I think trying to be as well informed as you possibly can. First of all, you've got to care. This is something that has got to be important to you. And then educating yourself and finding out what your options are, asking questions. Like, this is what I'm saying. One of the things that I do with my business is like helping to empower people, knowing what questions to ask, knowing, and I will get on the phone with their provider to help them ask the kinds of questions that they need to ask. So I would say looking for somebody like me, you know,
Hey, shameless plug.
Right.
you know,
But if
to
it
help
works, it works.
walk you through it. And there need to be more people who are attempting to do what it is that I'm doing now to help our people, to help empower our people to ask the right questions, to get the right care that they need, and to get it coordinated. But I think, of course, how did you say, Gabby? All skin people are not kin people.
All skin folk ain't kin folk.
That's true. That's very true. I recently switched healthcare providers. I had a healthcare provider who did not look like me, and I really loved her. I really liked her. I felt like I was really, really receiving high quality care, and I like her, and she's a good person, a nice person, and had a good relationship with her. But there was a question that came up in my health care, that there was a test, one of my tests that I looked at, and I had an abnormal result on one of my tests. And I was disturbed by that because it's not something that she discussed with me. I happened to find out about it because how you have the my chart where you can go to the patient portal and look at your results. So I hadn't normally done that routinely because of the challenges of navigating the computer so so I went and I looked, and this test is abnormal, and this is not the first time it's been abnormal. This is like the second time it's been abnormal. And this is not a discussion that we've had. Now, some may think, well, why didn't I raise the question, with her? And I feel like I shouldn't have to. I'm the patient. I should not even know that that's abnormal. You
But
should
the
know
average
it.
person probably
And they
wouldn't be able to
They
tell.
they wouldn't, or even if they saw that it said low or high or whatever, that was out of range, they wouldn't know the significance of it, nor the
Right.
importance of the timing of it, because this is something that there's a window of time that you need to address it immediately before it advances to something else. And so I was really, really disappointed with her. And I never had that discussion with her. I just found me another provider who looks like me, because I felt like, had I been someone who looked like her, she would have addressed that. And I think that was, I'm probably projecting onto her, but that's okay. She left herself open for it.
Let them know.
This is a very common condition among Black people. I'm Black. I'm older now, and I'm overweight. So I have some risk factors that, make me a prime target. So I'm thinking she's looking at this as if it's something that, oh, well, it's inevitable. She's going to go right on down the road, and this will, become full blown, whatever it is. So it's like not doing the things that needed to be done, because that is not my attitude. I don't believe I have to have any disease. And I believe when it's time for me to die, like people say, well, you have to die with something. Well, yeah, just leave when it's time to go. You don't have to suffer with something.
Right.
Now, that is
When
what I
God
believe.
calls me home.
Hello. That's how I plan to leave.
Hello.
And, I'm not on automatic pilot. I am proactive, and very, very, active about taking care of myself. I don't do a perfect job. Who does? But nevertheless, I'm cognizant, I'm aware, and of my choices and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to just lay down, oh, well. No, I'm going to fight it. And so anyway, yeah, I just found a provider who looks like me, and I love her.
Yeah.
She's a skin folk and a kin folk.
Okay.
I know that's right.
That's the best kind. But yeah, that's awesome. Just knowing that you do have to, I think people don't always recognize that not only do I have to go into the practitioner But I can't put all of my trust in the practitioner. I have to also be aware, and I have to advocate for myself. And if I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to do that, if I don't feel comfortable doing that, then you did bring up there is an option, finding someone like you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned like having like a health coach or someone that can be helpful in just
Mm-hmm.
navigating that for you. So,
Yes.
and Gabby,
Yes.
I don't know if I don't know if you wanted to bring this up, but
I was
that
going
is
to.
okay because you.
No, are you going to talk about my health issue?
Yeah, I was gonna see if you wanted to talk about that because you had to advocate for yourself also.
I did, because I do not play. I didn't know this is what it was, but I had a palatinal cyst, or palatinal, however you pronounce it, a palatinal cyst. It's like a cyst in my tailbone. And I didn't know what
Okay.
it was. I just knew I was having pain, tailbone pain.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I didn't want to go to the doctor. I literally waited till the pain was unbearable before I went to the doctor. And I already had an appointment with I already had like a well women's visit checkup. So I went there, I talked to my doctor, and she was like, I couldn't even lay down properly to get my well women's test done. I couldn't.
Oh
I was
my.
in so much pain. And she told me to go to a totally different type of doctor. She's like, I don't know if something's wrong, like with your spine or something, because I wish she would have looked. She didn't even look to where my pain was, but
Mm-hmm.
she was like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but whatever's going on with you, you look like you're in a lot of pain, and I don't think I can help you. So I went to whoever she referred me to. That doctor didn't look where I told him my pain was either. He just he did an x-ray, referred me to do an MRI, made me do some physical therapy, and nothing was helping. It was getting worse. My pain was getting worse. And it got to the point where I couldn't even stand up and walk.
Oh my God.
I couldn't stand up. I couldn't walk. To get to another room, I had to crawl. I couldn't sleep at night because I was in so much pain. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't know what I have to do, but I have to do something now. And I did my research. I went through so many message boards, Reddit, all of that. And I finally found some people who had like the same symptoms as me. I was like, okay, this has to be it. It has to be a palatinal cyst. And I had my fiance take me straight to urgent care. And I told him what I thought it was. And they were like, all he had to do was look. And he was like, yep, that's exactly what it is.
Oh
And
my
I was
God.
just like, if any of those healthcare professionals I went to previously would have just looked where I told them I was having my pain, I wouldn't have had to go through all of that.
Oh wow.
That's absolutely
Wow.
insane. So you had to literally figure it
Wow.
out, go in there and tell them exactly what it was
Oh my
in
God.
order
That's so.
to get it fixed. And that's
Yeah.
not something like having like an abscess or having that type of issue is not something that is something to play with. Like that can
Yeah, it did turn into an abscess. Like it got infected
Oh
and
my
it was
God.
growing. And the doctor said if I would have come any later, like that infection would have spread into like so many different places, and it could have been life threatening. Like,
Right. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And that is just really, that's such an unfortunate experience. I'm so sorry. And one of the things too, like you were talking about, how people can advocate for themselves and their own health. I think we are very fortunate. Oh, you don't live in St. Louis anymore, do you? I
I
was
do.
gonna.
I
I
do. I
don't, but
moved.
Gabby does.
Yes, I just moved back here this year.
Oh, okay, Gabby, welcome back home.
Glad to be back.
We're so fortunate to have Barnes Hospital, and I think no one wants to, necessarily go to Barnes, but that is a place we really need to keep in mind. When you go to physician and they're saying, I don't know and I'm not sure, go to Barnes because they are going to find out what's going on.
Mm.
They are going to look in because they're one of the top hospitals in the nation. And so, you don't necessarily want to go there for, a toothache and a toenail, you know, brittle toenail.
Right.
But when you are, facing situations where a doctor is saying, I don't know, then you need to go to Barnes and find out because they're going to get to the bottom of it and find out. So we're very fortunate to have that facility. Yeah.
That's good to know. So that's good to
It
know
really
what
is
types
good to
of
know.
like facilities, especially if you just so happen to be near like a facility that is leading in healthcare in the nation.
Mhm.
Or yeah, that's important to know. So make sure you guys
Mhm.
are doing your research, knowing what type of hospitals and facilities are around you, knowing what type of practitioners that look like you are around, potentially changing to them, and
Mhm.
then just making sure you're doing your research. Find, I guess that's another question. I was going to say, find some reliable sources. Are there any reliable like websites that you feel like if someone is trying to, go on Dr. Google to get some ideas of their like what's going on with their health, are there some that you feel like can be somewhat trusted compared to the others?
Whew, wow, that's a good question. That's a good question because there's so much out there, but it's so risky and dangerous. I just think you just need to go to your doctor. I do.
That's
I
fair.
just I just think you do because you don't know what it is. I can think of cases and times and situations when I've seen patients who come in because they saw something on television or they saw something on the they've already they've already this one is really kind of funny. This young man, he came in and he was like, I think I have a spider bite. I think I have a spider bite. And I said, really? He's like, yeah, because I looked on the internet and it looks just like, I don't think, was it the brown recluse spider bite? I can't remember. But
Mhm.
it looks just like that. I saw a picture of it. And so I think that's what it is. And I was like, well, did you see the spider? He was,
Lord.
well, no. Well, you know what? Any pain or no, but it just looks just like that picture. And I really think that's what it is. I said, well, okay, well, let me take a look at it. I looked at it, I was like, I think it's a ringworm.
Oh Lord.
He said, are you, are
Sir.
you, are you sure? Are you sure? I said, well, how many of these spider bites have you ever seen? Well, I've never seen one before. I said, well, I've seen a million of these ringworms, and this looks just like one. so,
Okay.
so
No, that's
but
another good point though. So you do need to advocate for yourself. You can do your research, but at the
mhm,
same time, steer clear, be careful because sometimes you can go
yeah,
on the internet and say like, "Oh, I have an earache," and then all of a sudden you're looking stuff up and like, "Guys, I'm currently experiencing a stroke." I just want you like
that is so,
it can take you to a complete
it's
extreme.
it always gets
that is so
extreme.
true.
Yeah.
And you know
So
what, which brings me to Gabby, and I'm so glad that you took the next step and you took the next step until you
mm,
got the right answer. Because, I mean, you're right. Anyone who has an abscess, that it needs to be treated because it
mm,
can develop into something serious. I mean, it could, if that infection gets into your bloodstream, it can absolutely be life threatening. And so, even an abscess on a tooth, so
mhm.
that's really important to not ignore symptoms, not neglect them, but to go ahead and be persistent in getting answers.
So
So
get
you
second
find someone who,
opinions, and if you need
Mhm.
to.
yes,
Hmm.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
For me,
absolutely.
third opinion, but
Yeah.
Say whatever it takes. A
Yeah.
girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. Oh,
yeah.
can I
Yeah.
make this point too? Speaking about healthcare, and where your audience, I think your target audience is mostly young moms, young women, and I think it's important for us to recognize and just remind one another that women really are the gatekeepers to the family health. I mean, it would be nice if men would lead, but they don't. They don't, and particularly black men do not.
Mm,
So we're just in that role. It's been thrust upon us, so we have to carry that burden and that responsibility of being the gatekeepers to the family health.
mm, mhm,
That's amazing. I know we've been on for so long, it's getting late, but I just have one more question. I just cannot stop talking to you. But this question, because I think our audience would really like to know your generation's thoughts on marriage, because I feel like from then to now, it's totally different.
Mm.
It's totally different. Like, people aren't getting married as much. They're not staying married as long. They don't respect the sanctity of marriage as much. A lot of people are thinking it's just a piece of paper. You know what I'm saying? And I know it wasn't like that. So I'm like, how did we get from that to this? And I just want to know what your thoughts are on marriage, and if you passed any of those beliefs down.
We need another podcast for that subject.
We need a whole
I know. I was like, maybe we just need to have you back. I don't know, but
that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. I'm like, do we want to save this, or do we want to keep going?
I mean, I say let's go ahead and answer. I mean, if we want to, I do foresee a part 2, maybe 3 and 4 out of this. But yeah, I say, I mean, feel free to go ahead and answer, and yeah, and then we can kind of wrap it up and plan for more later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a biblical perspective on life and everything that pertains to it. A biblical scriptural perspective. And so the Bible teaches us that Christ is going to return to this earth. And he said, he told us some things that were going to happen prior to his return. And so sin, wickedness, corruption, violence, he said that as it was in the days of Noah, that's the way it's going to be when he returns. So the scripture is very clear about what was going on in the days of Noah. It says that there was violence throughout the earth. There was corruption, throughout the earth. And it says that the thoughts and intents of man's heart and his imagination was evil continuously. Now, if we just take that and then step back for a minute and look at our world. I was looking at a program on TV the other day, and they were talking about airplanes, and these were like fighter planes. And so these airplanes that were going 300 miles per hour and then 1,000 miles per hour, then 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, over 5,000 miles per hour. Yes, that we have military airplanes that can go at that rate, that speed. So, and this is the total sole purpose of this machinery is to kill people. And so, and then we're studying more, about how to, and every time we develop something that is more advanced than the one before, then we sell that to somebody else and make some money off of it because we've got something better now. And what are they buying those for? So they can kill somebody. So it's like the intent, the imagination. It's like we have, I mean, to build these bomber jets and all this military power, and to keep advancing it more and more. There's already enough down here to destroy the whole planet, and yet we're still stockpiling it and continuing to want something that's bigger and even more deadly. This is the time that we live in, and the thoughts and intents and imaginations of man's heart is evil continuously. I could go into some other things, but you look at deterioration and decay all around you. Let's just look in education, for instance, where so many of our children are not graduating from high school And so many of the children, I was listening, there was an educator that had this posted on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying how parents really do need to be concerned about their children. They really need to be involved because the way the system is set up now, they pass children whether they have learned what they need to learn or not. They do not retain them. They do not hold them back. They pass them on. So it is so easy for a child to just fall behind, and just it's just hopeless. You look at what's happening in the Flint, Michigan area with the water, and the people in that city are being poisoned by the water, and particularly think about the children because their brains are still developing. And when you're exposed to lead and lead poisoning, that is brain damage that is irreparable. It's irreversible. It is permanent. And so we're in this country which is the economic military power of the world, and we can't fix the water supply in Flint, Michigan. Of course we can. Of course we can. There's a reason why they're not taking care of that problem. Most of the people living in that city, the vast majority of them are Black. So you've got all of this generation of Black children now being raised up with brain damage. What's going to happen to them? They have two things that are possible for them. They can't live a normal life. They can't get the kind of jobs that you have. They're with brain damage. They're going to either end up in prison or they're going to die early. That's it. So this is the world that we're living in. And I've said all this because there's the deterioration in the family and marriage, the institutions that God established. So we see all this deterioration happening even within that, within the family. And because of the deterioration, each generation has even fewer models. The psychological damage that comes from being raised in broken homes. Oh, this really gets deep now, because then we have to get into what happened to rip the families apart. When I was a kid, I could count on one hand, I could probably count on 3 fingers, the families that were not intact. Everybody had a mother, a father, the same mother, the same father, and the same, and the children from that couple. These were intact families, and poor Black folks, but intact families and strong communities. I was just talking about the respect for the elders in the community, strong community. So now with the deterioration of the family, I can put my finger on 2 things because I saw it fall apart. I'm not talking about reading a history book. I saw it fall apart. Number 1, introducing the welfare system that required the men to leave the home. Now, okay, so you have a young woman who has these children she's trying to raise. They're poor, and the government says, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars to help with the children, to help pay the bills, help clothe them, blah, blah, blah. But you can't have a man in the house. So now the father has to leave. Well, this is a young woman, fertile, childbearing age. What's going to happen next? Well, the husband had to leave. So now Tom, Dick, and Harry are going to be coming around to visit. That's what's going to happen. Now you got 3 or 4 sets of children in that house instead of 1 set. I'm just talking about the reality. The family now has been ripped apart. It has deteriorated. Now, without a 2-parent family, the negative impact that this has on children, there have been too many studies that have been done to show what happens with children that are reared in a 1-family home. That was the big thing. The next big thing was our government sowing drugs in our community. I said it. We should know that by now. Surely everybody knows that by now. That was not an accident. our people, our communities were targeted, and the drugs were dumped in our communities. Okay, so that was the straw, in my opinion, that broke the camel's back. I mean, it was rapidly downhill after that. One other thing, these projects. Remember the housing projects. When you really stop and think about that word itself, what kind of project is it? Well, a
That's a
project
great
is
point.
it is. What, because we just think, oh, just housing. No, it was a project. So you're building these tall complexes, these tall buildings, stacking people on top of each other. They don't have much money. They're stacking. You're dumping drugs in it. What is going to happen? It's almost like they're sitting back, like the Tuskegee study, to see
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you're in a situation like. Plus, those buildings, those facilities were they had lead in the paint. They so now you got these children raised up in these projects with these brain damage. With brain damage, you got a pipeline to prison, is what you have. I'm just talking about what has happened to our people and to our families. So now they don't have good role models for what a family looks like. They don't have good role models for what a husband and wife look like. Because most husbands and wives have probably come from broken homes themselves. So they're carrying that. We were talking about it earlier, the trauma, the damage, all of that they're carrying. Now these two broken people are together trying to have some kind of intact union. It is a very sad state of affairs. I'm going to get back to the word now because I hadn't planned to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I believe that we are the Hebrew Israelites, God's chosen people of the Bible. I do believe that. And so there's so much in the scriptures that support that. This is one of them. There's a prophecy in the scriptures that says that that God's people were going to be scattered all over the world, all over the earth. They would be scattered to all the nations and all the countries, and they would be oppressed. They would be enslaved. This is prophecy. And one of the things that is described is how the time would come when there would be man to seven women, one man to seven women. And the women would say to this man, I wish I could just turn to the scripture, tell you where it is. I'll share that with you later if I can look it up. But the women would say, you don't have to just, you don't have to take care of me. You don't have to provide for me. Just give me your name. It's like basically just let me be your woman because there's seven women to every man. Now, when you look across the globe now, you just look at all people. Who in the world does that fit but our people?
Yeah.
Everybody else, you still basically have one eligible guy for each woman, I mean, but not in our community. And it's sad. When this shift took place, especially like with my children in that generation, your parents, it's like when my generation, we were still married, there were still intact families, but then it ripped apart. Then it was broken. It was broken for your generation. So now you look, not for your generation, for your parents' generation, and now you look and you see, um, you see the damage from that fallout, and just the crippling of the family and the crippling of marriages. And so, like I said, there are no good role models, and you look at these beautiful young women who it's like don't have many options, I'll put it that way, because so many of our men are in prison, on drugs, getting killed early, don't have the economic you know ability to take care of a family and to provide the kind of living that you would expect for a man to provide. And so these are the things that we're facing. These are the challenges. And so I'm gonna just leave it there. And I think maybe we can probably talk about it a little bit more later on because this is just like the beginning of it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you definitely bring up some good points. There are a lot of different factors that play a part in breaking down the structure and like the way that families work now.
Mhm.
So whether it be economic or 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 specific methods that were intended to do so, um, there are a lot of things that break that family structure down.
Mhm.
So, and I
And
think
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry.
the only thing I was going to say was I think that having these types of conversations is something that can make a huge difference in understanding and preventing and breaking some cycles there.
Mhm.
So it's really important to have these conversations. Sorry, Gabby, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say that just listening to you talk, it gave a lot of insight, and it got me thinking that it's a lot of spiritual warfare going on,
Mhm.
and that's one of the main reasons why marriage is not as prevalent as it was back then. Because I mean, marriage is an institution of God, and I feel like people aren't going to church anymore, and people aren't, they're not just getting the word of God like they used to. So of course that institution of God is not going to be as cherished as it was before. So it makes sense.
Mhm.
um, but that's all I had to say, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us today and giving us so much wisdom and insight. If I could, I would talk to you all night. So, but and also
Yes.
do want to plug your business. Please tell us the name of your business or website or wherever they can reach you, and we'll also put that information in the description of our podcast as well.
Okay, fantastic. Um, I'm Alpha Wellness LLC, and my website is not really functional at this point. We're kind of upgrading it, but probably just sending me an email would be the best way to contact me at this point, and that's alphawellness.jp@gmail.com.
Okay, Alpha ALPHA
Mm-hmm.
Wellness.
Wellness WELLNESS .jp@gmail.com.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody got that.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I think we got a lot here.
Yeah, we
Thank you
can
for
stop.
having me.
No
Yay.
problem.
Yay.
Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And we just want to remind you guys, give yourself grace, because getting it wrong is the first step in getting it right.